Today on Color Outside the Box podcast.
I've seen a 3-year-old who you would think is not absorbing everything, but they absorb everything, who knew the plan. If daddy got outraged or if daddy started hitting mommy, he knew to go to the safe phone and call 911.
Color Outside the Box is a podcast series that focuses on creating a better you. Whether it's advice about family, relationships, raising children in this technological world, marriage, or careers, we seek to find the answers to help you live your best life. So start your Monday morning off right with me, your hostess with the mostest, Princess Miller, on Color Outside the Box right here on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be heard. Well, good Monday morning. It is now time for the Color Outside the Box podcast with your hostess, Princess Miller. I am so excited to have our guest back with us again today, Miss Olympia Clopton. Everybody, let's give her a hand.
Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Olympia. Thank you for joining us today, and back again with some very good information. Another great show, and this show is going to be talking about recognizing the signs of an abuser. I think this is so important as we look at Facebook and so just social media in general, and even in the news. There are so many cases of domestic violence that's going on, and even more so, I would say, within the last few years compared to the last few decades. And so I think that it's very important that we cover this topic today, and because there are a lot of women out there that's facing this issue, whether they're in a domestic violence situation or maybe become a victim of a domestic violence situation. So tell us about what your expertise is.
Well, I first got into domestic violence when I was in college. I interned at a domestic violence shelter when I was getting my undergrad for about a year, and then finished college and actually went into a career for about almost 9 months at a domestic violence shelter locally, and was the case manager, then became to the direct service manager, did individual counseling, and also, as well as the women's support group. And so, like you said, Princess, domestic violence is something that's real serious in our community, in just the world, period. I'm just going to, give some brief tips and just kind of describe what domestic violence is.
Okay.
Domestic violence is abuse by one person or another in a relationship, considered a marriage, or in a cohabitation. Typically, sometimes you hear domestic violence called intimate partner violence, which is committed by a spouse or a partner in an intimate relationship against the other spouse or partner. Okay. That could be heterosexual. It could be same-sex relationships. You always have an abuser, and then you have the victim. Mm-hmm. Domestic violence is a learned behavior. It's not something that we automatically have this aggressive tendency in us, but a lot of abusers, the abuser can be the female or the male in the relationship. A lot of abusers have probably seen this in their homes growing up, or at a relative's house, a friend's house, in their community, their neighborhood, even on TV. They've absorbed so much, and so they've kind of learned that behavior and thought that behavior was normal, because we go back to what is normal sometimes, and that's their normal life. And then you have victims. If they grew up in a home and one of their parents was abusing the other one, and they've learned to play, if they learn to play that role as a victim, and not necessarily a role, but if they were affected by the abuse, they sometimes gravitate to those abusive relationships. So you see it a lot, and there's more and more research about domestic violence and the ways we can prevent it.
And let me ask you a question. With this culture of violence that's going on today, if you watch television, even in cartoons now, back in the day, it was Road Runner and Bugs Bunny, and there was a lot of violence in that, and Tom and Jerry. But I mean, these days, you can barely watch anything without, sexual content and violence being prevalent in almost every single episode. And it seems that we have shaped Hollywood's opinion that, this is what we want, because the higher grossing movies are the ones that have all the big action scenes with all the fighting. And so, I mean, do you think that plays a part?
It does. That's why I say it's a learned behavior. If we're portraying this in cartoons and movies and TV shows, and you have that young child who thinks that's okay, or you have that teenager thinks, well, this is the way I'm supposed to react, or my behavior when I get older, or right now, because you have abusers start at any age. A 7-year-old can start hitting, and if the parent doesn't correct it or give them the proper help, they think it's okay. It's normal. I've seen a 3-year-old who you would think is not absorbing everything, but they absorb everything, who knew the plan. And in this situation, it was a married couple, and who knew the plan. If daddy got outraged, or if daddy started hitting mommy, he knew to go to the safe phone, and call 911.
Wow.
And then had another, a cell phone where he could call and text a relative and put in safe. And so safe was their key word.
Wow.
Meaning, please get help now. So, like I said, as young as 3. So, I just pray that that child is neither a victim nor an abuser when he gets older. And you could have 3 children, 4 children in a home. One can be an abuser, one could be a victim, and the other 2 be totally fine. Or the children have this, mom or dad has got them out of that abusive home, and none of them gravitate to being an abuser or a victim.
Wow. So, what do you think that we could do as parents? I know that it starts with the parents.
It starts with the parents. It starts with our teachers. It starts with the community. Everybody plays a part.
Okay.
And trying to change the culture in our everyday lives, and what we watch, and what we portray at schools and at work.
Okay.
And just like I've seen, same-sex couples. It happens. In domestic violence, it doesn't matter if your ethnicity, your race, your economic status. I've seen high-status people who have dealt with, who are dealing with domestic violence, and be so prideful and embarrassed they stay in a relationship because of their name in society.
Now, I do want to make sure that we drive home the point that domestic violence is not male. It's not all about the male dominating or controlling or abusing the female. It can be the female abusing the male. Recently, I was watching a television show, and in the show, this rookie cop was going to handle a domestic violence situation. And when they opened the door, it was this 6'6" big burly guy, and they just assumed that he was beating his wife. And so they took the wife aside to talk to her and try to convince her to press charges. But actually, it was the wife that was abusing the husband.
Yes.
And so he would not press charges. And so they ended up getting a second call. And when they got there to defuse the situation, the wife had a knife and had jumped on the husband and stabbed and killed him.
Yeah.
Right there in front of the cops. So it's not just males, it's females that are out there.
And sometimes when the males are the ones getting abused, what I've seen and in research and actually, dealt with in my professional life is that they're embarrassed. And there's nothing to be embarrassed about because abuse is abuse. Yeah.
So in your 9 years experience working with domestic violence victims, what will be the signs that someone could, basically recognize and say, okay, well, I'm seeing right now that early in this relationship, this person has a tendency to be an abuser.
Okay. Well, that goes with the power and control wheel. That's something I used a lot in support group and in individual counseling. There are several signs, but I specifically use the power control wheel. And there's so many power control wheels. One of them is that using coercion and threats, making or carrying out threats to do something to hurt or threatening to leave the person. Because leaving a person and the victim feels like they're hopeless, because depending on how long the relationship is, that victim's self-esteem is lower than low. And so she thinks if he or she, if he leaves me, then no one else is going to want me. Also, reporting him to DHR. That's part of using coercion. Saying, hey, I'm going to have the kids taken away from you because you're not a fit parent.
Wow. Just
because he or she doesn't want to be abused anymore. Making her drop charges. One thing you can file for is the protection from abuse order, and that you can include your children in that, and the place that you live, so you can protect yourself from the abuser. You'll have to go to a court hearing, but that's something. And it's PFA is totally different than
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to pause right there. We're going to take a commercial break. We'll be right back with more from Color Outside the Box podcast with your hostess, Princess Miller, and guest, Olympia Clopton.
What's up, everybody? Trey here to tell you about one of the best gym experiences in Mobile, Embrace Fitness Training Center. Embrace Fitness is more than just a gym. We offer personal training, speed and agility training, golf simulator, golf fitness, boot camp classes, childcare, and even powerlifting. We're open Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We love families, and kids are welcome. At Embrace Fitness, we believe that a family that works out together will stay together and live healthier and happier lives. So embrace the new you. We're located on Airport Boulevard near Cody Road. Try Embrace Fitness Training Center today. Your first visit is on me.
Princess Creative Productions can provide affordable and professional video services for small to mid-sized businesses. Our in-studio virtual set shoots start as low as $200. Let our expert get to work on your next video project. Call 251-421-4490 to book your next shoot. All right, and we're back on Color Outside the Box podcast with Princess Miller and our special guest today, Miss Olympia Clopton. Thank you for joining us. And so you were talking to us before the break about the
power control wheel.
The power and control wheel.
I think we ended. I was talking about that protection from abuse order is something totally different than from getting a restraining order. When it's an abuse and a victim in a domestic violence situation, it is vital to get that protection from abuse order if you can. Another cycle in the power control wheel is using intimidation, making her or he afraid by using looks, actions, and gestures, smashing things, destroying her property or his property. They also use pets. They'll threaten to hit the pet or they'll throw the pet across the room.
Wow.
I can't deal with that because I love my little dog. I can't. But another one is using emotional abuse, and that sometimes is the hard one to recognize, especially if that's the only part that you're dealing with and trying to get the law on your side or trying to get a PFA. But emotional abuse is one that comes on slowly at times, but it's a lot of people would say I'd rather get hit than deal with the mental and emotional part. And emotional abuse is putting her down or putting him down, making the victim feel bad about herself, calling the victim names, making them think they're crazy, playing mind games, and making her feel guilty or making him feel guilty of any little thing. I've seen a person who cooks bacon the same way each day, and this day it was a guy in this situation that was the abuser. He just felt like it wasn't the same, and so he just really just dogged her out and actually got physical.
Wow. Over bacon.
Also over clocking her mileage. And I'm saying her in this one because it was a female. You know, he knew what time she got off work and what time, how many miles it took for her to get to job to home, and she was like a mile over. It was some traffic, so they had a detour. But she couldn't get that through his mind. He surely thought she was going to see somebody.
Wow.
She was a minute late and a mile over.
Wow.
Using isolation, controlling what the victim does, who she sees or